Good morning, everyone. I'm sure everyone is very excited because we're like, what's happening? What are we going to talk about today? I'm pretty excited. You know, Lori and I always have our little pre-meeting before, so I already got my own little special MAA with Lori over here. So for those that it's your first day, you're like, what is the Small Biz Talk? Well, let me tell you. My name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the SBDC, a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. We offer no-cost services to the local businesses through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, Go Biz. The Los Angeles Regional Small Business Development Center network serves small businesses throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And what do we do? Well, we offer no-cost service at no-cost business advising, meaning that you can meet one-on-one via phone or Zoom to address your specific needs and challenges. And we also offer virtual training and programming, such as this awesome show, to help adapt and grow your business. So, on that note, good morning, Lori. How are you?
I love your introductions. I love how upbeat they are. I love the excitement. I just love everything about that. Every time I hear you do the introductions, it just makes me smile.
I
So
mean, we're setting the vibe for today, Lori. I mean, this is Monday.
I know this is a fun day. Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen first and go over a few things. And right now, throw questions in. What do you want to talk about? I was just actually looking at the amount of people that are already here on a holiday. Like I said, I always say this to Sadie. I say, Sadie, it's a holiday. I think we should not even have it. What do you think? And Sadie goes, no, people tune in. They don't care it's a holiday. They'll miss us. I go, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll come on and we'll just have a conversation. I'm sure there's nothing we'll talk about. We'll end early. And Sadie smiles because we always end up going over because we talk about so much. So, welcome everybody to Thanksgiving week. So, I'm going to start out by I got a couple fun things, and Sadie's going to monitor everything in the chat. Now, so first of all, before I say this, make sure when you put anything in the chat or the question, but mostly when this is about the chat, make sure you have the drop down to everybody, okay? Make sure you have the drop down to everybody. Otherwise, everybody doesn't see it. If you just wanted to come to me, host and panelists, you can do host and panelists, but it does the host and panelists by default. So make sure you have everybody if everybody wants to see it. I'm going to go through a few things. So put in the chat. Everybody, tell me what your great holiday plans are. Is anybody doing anything really, really, really cool? And Sadie will be looking at them. And, Sadie, you'll tell us like the top coolest ones you see while I'm done with my presentation to begin with. Okay. So go ahead, throw it in there. Sadie reads the chat better than I do because I'm watching too much going on. So, Sadie, you tell me anything that you want to mention that's thrown in the chat. Tell us what you're doing for the holidays, what's cool about life. Let's start out with a positive vibe, guys. So just tell me what's going on in your world and anything positive. And let me get started here because I'm going to talk about a couple announcements that I want to make sure everybody's aware of. So once again, as always, the financial literacy series, I'm going to do it for December. I'm also going to do the legal structure and tax advantages for December. Even if I get just a few people sign up, I have or I should say so often, people come with this misunderstanding about what a sole prop is, what an LLC is, what documents you really have to file, what's a benefit, what's a disadvantage, etc. And so if I help one person to make a better decision, I always say it's worth it. So I'm going to run that as well as December. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about a sole prop. We're going to chat about that in a bit. Upcoming shows in December. I can't believe I'm saying December. So we have Adam Chapman, which is a fellow advisor at the Pasadena SBDC. His areas of expertise are entrepreneurship, operations, crowdfunding, team building, startups, all over the board there. So I know we're going to have lots of cool conversations to have. And then Marjorie McPike is a CPA, and she came from Dahlia. Those of you who know Dahlia, because she's been on the show several times, you guys love when I have Dahlia on. Dahlia recommended that I had Marjorie on the show, so I'm very excited to have her on. It's the end of the year. We're going to talk about tax things. I also believe from my limited conversation with Dahlia, she gets involved in some pretty interesting audits and stuff, so maybe she'll share some interesting things with us. I want to mention, I know I bring this up every once in a while, and I do so believing that everybody knows about it. And then just yesterday, I had a bunch of people that didn't know about it, so I'm always going to bring this up. It's the beneficial ownership information. This was a new report that became a requirement as of this year, January 1st. Okay. It had never been asked before. This is on a federal level. We're not talking about state. This is on a federal level. And this is through FinCEN, which is really the financial network of crimes, international crimes. Like, for example, if you're into money laundering, you would get FinCEN would go after you. It's a department, like I said, a US Treasury. Well, what happened is the beginning of this year, they had this special form that they're requiring pretty much all businesses across the board to fill out, unless you're a sole prop. Sole prop, do this. You don't need to know about this. But how you would know if you have to fill it out is, did you file or register with the Secretary of State in your state? So if you think about nonprofit registered, LLC registered, S Corp registered, C Corp registered, some partnerships registered, they're all registered, right? So that means they have to fill out this report. The link I'm giving you is where you go to fill out the report, and it involves giving the ID, your tax ID, your address. They want to know who owns the company, the address of all the owners of the company, and uploading some form of ID, which can be a passport, a driver's license, or a tribal ID. Now, if you started a company this year, you would have had 90 days to fill this out. If you start one next year, they're getting even smaller amount of days. You only have 30. Now, if you were incorporated before January 1st, your deadline's coming up. It's January 1st of next year. Now, here's the thing, guys. If you don't fill this out, it's a $500 a day fine, up to 10,000, and even like jail time, okay? So they didn't do a very good public campaign, I guess you would call it, to get it out to everybody. I am noticing that some tax preparers are now sending out emails to their clients. And like I said, I think everybody's aware of it, and I'm surprised they're not. So if you don't have any clue what I'm talking about, if you need to fill it out, if you need any help, Sadie will put my email address in there. You email me. I wrote a little article on steps you can take. I can send you the article. I can also walk you through. We can do a screenshot, whatever. I just want to make sure everybody gets this done. Oh, and for some reason my share just went, and I didn't mean that to happen. So let me come back. Oh, okay. Yep, I did, because the next information I actually have on another piece of paper. I remember, because it's a little bit longer. So also Sadie is going to put information about the BIO in the chat. So you're going to see that in the chat. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is something new that just came up, and this has to do with the threshold for those of you who use third-party payers. Think like Vimo, think about like PayPal, etc. Anybody who is using the third-party payer, and I'm sorry, I'm talking and trying to get to something here. So right now I'm talking about this here that Sadie's going to put into the chat now. Before Sadie, I was talking about this, Sadie's put in the chat. I'm now talking about this. So what happens is, if you have income coming in your business income over $600, you have to report to the IRS. That has always been there. That's a given, right? So when you think about getting a 1099, and many people say I'm a 1099, they call themselves a form. What a 1099 really is all about is, if you think about being an employee and getting a W-2, when an employee is paid, the taxes are already taken out and sent to the government. So think about the government, the IRS. They know you got the money. They know you owe taxes. They already took the taxes, okay? Now think about if you have your own company, sole prop LLC, I'm talking any company, right? They don't know that a client paid you, right? And so the 1099, the whole concept of that is, if anybody is being paid more than 600. Now, if it's a corporation, technically you don't have to send them a 1099, but everybody does, because that way it's the safest thing to do. So if you pay somebody more than $600 in a year, you send them the 1099, you have to by law, and then a copy goes to the IRS. So really, if you think about it, guys, a 1099 is the way IRS has set it up. So if you get income over $600, they are telling on you. They're forcing whoever paid you to tell on you to the government. So they got this little 1099 thing. Go, oh, Chris got a 1099. It looks like Chris didn't put it on their tax returns. I'm going to go after Chris for the money that's owed. So a 1099 is really a way for the government to track any payments that were made to people outside of being an employee. That's another way of saying it. Okay. Now, what is happening now is that a lot of people do use third-party settlement organizations like a Venmo, a PayPal, etc. Now, previously, if you received over $20,000 or 200 transactions, you would get what's called a 1099-K. It's the same concept. It's now getting these third-party payers to tell on you, right, to the IRS that, oh, you got $20,000, you didn't report it. Well, they were talking in 23 about changing the threshold to 600 and they got some pushback. So they said, okay, we're not going to do that yet. So what they're doing is as of the year 2024, anybody that is getting over 5,000, and then in the year 2025 they're planning on going it to 600. Now here's the thing I want to talk about. Many, unlike, if you have a Stripe account and you're, using it to charge customers, you're not going to go, hey, I just went out to lunch with my friend, they owe me the money, they're going to do it through my Stripe account. It's just used for business, right? But a lot of times people don't have a separate Venmo, they don't have a separate PayPal, and they kind of use a transaction where maybe they'll go to a farmer's market, they'll use a Venmo or some kind of, third-party payer to collect from their customers. Then they'll turn around and get a birthday gift on it, or they'll get a, reimbursement for a lunch or what have you. So you now have to have the responsibility of looking at this 1099 and saying this much is for personal and this much is for company, because the IRS is going to get the whole number. And on taxes, on tax return, you've got to fill out a spot that says, out of the whole number, this is how much is personal and this is how much is business. Otherwise, you're going to be paying income tax on a reimbursement from a lunch from a friend. Okay. So proper accounting is going to become key to keeping this information, whether that means setting up separate accounts or whether that means keeping a record, but it's going to be really, really, really important to have that happen. And Robert, you're right. Yep. Nope, it's going to be 5,000. Yeah, 5,000. I didn't hear about the 2,500 because that notice you just got is directly from IRS. So that notice that because I'm an enrolled agent, so I get the announcements from the IRS. So what Sadie has just put in the chat, I think she did. Chat goes too fast for me to catch up on it, but that is exactly from the IRS on what they are saying. So yep, 2,500 and 2025 and 600. So yes, Robert, I'm saying yes, and I'm saying that is exactly what the IRS is saying. I don't think I said that well, but I think you got my gist of it. I was trying to read chat and talk at the same time. Sadie, back to you. Anything we need to know? Any cool holiday plans? Anything I missed what that was in the chat while I was chatting up a storm over here?
Actually, maybe turn on my mic so I can say hello to you guys. You know how it is. I just love talking to myself.
I understand that one. At least I get along with myself better,
No, totally. Well, you know what? As always, like I think people are interesting because we love mixing it up. Like we got some Thanksgiving plans in there, and I think a theme of Thanksgiving is how we all love each other in this group, and we're not going to stress out about this whole entire concept of the holidays. Like let's just relax and enjoy ourselves. And then we have questions about DBAs and stuff. So I'm like, oh, but which way should we go first? Should we go DBAs or should we talk about holiday plans and eating?
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's get the holiday. Let's start with a good note. Let's just do a few comments on holiday and then let's get into the questions. How's that? Give me an idea. What is the fun holiday things? Anything you want to mention?
Well, my thing, and I was like, oh my God, I'm like, this is just like the perfect day for Maria, where she's like, I'm just planning to walk on the beach tomorrow and rest and relax. That's it. And I was
No,
like,
Maria, I'm right with you.
scared.
Nikki and I were talking about, I want to do the wonderful act of do nothing. I was telling Sadie, not in any bad things, but man, I'm friggin' exhausted. Does anybody else? I don't want to think. I don't want to speak. I don't want to interact. Okay, I'm not that way, you guys know, but right now that's where I am. So tomorrow I am like in my little mind's eye, I am shutting the Lori shade. That's what I'm doing. The shade shut, the little Lucy thing, it's gonna go closed on the outside of the booth, and I'm shutting the shade and I'm going catch up with you next week. So yeah, I understand that one completely.
Oh
Okay, so
my God.
throw me a question because there's too much in the chat for me to even find anything. What does somebody have a question on?
Well, I'm gonna throw this question at you, but I'm just gonna say, you know what? I just pictured you like in a cozy chair. It's gonna be pink, this
Yes,
pink
yes.
cozy chair, with your awesome windows looking into like the deer passing by, and I just see you with like some hot cocoa, and I want to like picture you like watching a rom-com, like Love Actually or something.
I just love going nothing. I'm out really remote, guys, really, really remote. And so I just sit out and I watch the birds and the squirrels and the deer come over into my yard and the raccoons I haven't seen. I don't know where the raccoons are, but I am surrounded by nature and trees and forest, and it is a really pleasant experience. So I can feel like absolutely nothing is going on in the world outside of my blue jays eating the bird feed, and that's a wonderful thing. So it's really cool to have the best of both worlds. You guys have known me for a long time. I have to be nature. I always say that I always have to be outside more than the average human being, and I have to be connected to Gaia, Mother Earth, more than the average human being. Otherwise, I don't feel good. I got to have my feet in the grass, in the mud, on the dirt, and pushing my cat in a stroller. Yeah, that's my other
There
favorite
we go.
thing.
Oh my God, I have to share this one. So Kim's like, I'm calling my family and telling them I'm spending the day with Maria instead. I hear that, Kim.
We were just chatting about that. Okay, so anybody that just wants to go for the birds, the deer, the squirrels, come on over to my place. We'll just hang out and not talk about anything other than just all sit and look at the tree and go, wow, let's look at the birds.
Relax and you're just chillaxing, right? Just renew that energy, renew that energy.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't know if I have it on my, I don't think I have it on my desktop anymore. I was going to share one thing if it's on my desktop. So if I find it real quick, maybe I will share it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually do. So this is, I think I shared this last time. This is my, okay, I can't go without showing you my cat picture, right? Okay. Can you see that, Sadie?
Yes.
Okay, so Babu got some new wheels, man. She is styling. And so we're going to be taking out with her new wheels. So she has now a heated blanket. And so this is what I'll be doing Thanksgiving is taking my lovely little child out for a spin with her new wheels. There we go.
Awesome. I love the cup holder too. You're like, can't forget the cup holder.
My coffee. I got my coffee, I got my iPhone, and we're just cruising along. And she's like looking around at everything and all cuddled up in her blanket. I know it's like crazy stuff, but you know what? I think I said, okay, universe, if I come back here, I know it's going to be a wild, wild ride, but you know what? I'm going to have fun and I'm going to laugh in spite of everything. That was my deal. I'm going to have fun and I'm going to laugh. And I think laughter is it's just the medicine. I think it's the cure of all, especially when you talk about so many, things like I do, tax, finance, and law. You got to have some laughter in
You
there.
gotta have some LOLs in there. Okay, now I got a serious one. I got a serious one for you.
Okay, let's
Okay.
get into this. So,
Okay. So from Erwin says, I just got my new DBA name with my LLC. Do I need to notify FTB with the new DBA name?
So I'm assuming, and have some clarification on that. So I'm assuming you had an LLC that was registered with one name and you got a DBA to operate under that LLC using an additional or other name. Can Aaron give me a quick yes on that and you find it so I make sure I'm answering the question correctly? Because if not, I'm going to ask, why did you get a DBA with an LLC? So,
Ah,
so
Erwin Estrella, please come to the chat window.
yeah,
Okay.
give it. Okay.
Erwin says yes.
Okay, so Erwin, so you got the DBA. So I'm going to actually, this is a fantastic question, Erwin, because I was going to talk about what is a DBA. And so this is an ideal situation to do this. So when we talk about a DBA, and see, Erwin's situation is ideal to bring this up because many people associate a DBA, which is doing business as, it's also called a fictitious business name, which is abbreviated FBN. And that's on their website, on the website to sign up for this. So let's first talk about what it is. And then, Erin, hold on, we're going to get to you the answer to your question throughout this explanation. So I'm going to give you the legal term. If you want to engage in financial transactions, it's really about financial transactions in a name other than your surname, your birth name, if you're a sole prop, or in a name other than your registered name, if you're a company, Irwin situation, then you can file a DBA or fictitious business name. Now, what that is doing is it's saying that I recognize this name as well as your surname or your company name. Now, people say, I'm going to set up a website. Do I have to get a DBA? No, that's not a financial transaction. So let's talk about what I mean by this. So say I'm a sole prop for a second, and on my business bank account, it says Lori Williams. Well, I want to say, cat sweaters. I'm going to do cat sweaters. I'm going to knit cat sweaters. So I wanted to say cat sweaters, right? Well, if somebody wrote me a check to cat sweaters and I tried to put it in my bank account, the bank would go, no, the name on the bank account's Lori Williams. You can't put a check written out or a transaction, whatever. I use check because it's easy to understand. But you can't put that in this bank account because the bank account doesn't have the name cat sweaters, right? So I file a DBA, fictitious business name, saying cat sweaters. I get the little seal of approval. I take it to the bank and they can add cat sweaters on. So now it says Lori Williams, DBA cat sweaters. So now a check can go in for Lori Williams, a check can go in for cat sweaters, right? Now, say I have a company named Cat Sweaters and I want to also have something called Dog Sweaters, right? Well, then I have to get a DBA that says Dog Sweaters. So now a check written to Cat Sweaters or Dog Sweaters can go in the bank account. So that's why I say it's really about financial transactions. Now, when you get the DBA, Erwin, this is you. When you get the DBA, you must then use that name with the business name or your surname on all documents. So let's talk about like a tax return. It's going to say what is the company name, or it's going to say your name if it's a sole prop, and then there's going to be a DBA and it's going to have the area to put the DBA. If you're looking at a seller's permit, it's going to say DBA. If you're doing state taxes, it's going to say DBA. It's kind of like when somebody uses their married and maiden name, then legally they always got to show the married and maiden name. It's the combination of all names that becomes the name, if you will, right? So the same is true. So when you get a DBA, you're not necessarily having to refile certain documents, so technically, you're not having to go in and say, well, I'm going to renew my seller's permit and stuff, although you can update it. And when it comes time to state taxes, federal taxes, the next time you file the tax return, you're going to put the DBA on. So you don't have to do updates with DBAs as much as you have to then fill out a form. Now, the statement of information on the case of an LLC is going to say, do you have any DBAs? Do you have any address changes? Did any of the officers change? So they're pretty strict that says if any of the information changes, you have to do an amendment of the statement of information. So I'd have to look up on the statement of information because I do believe it says DBA. I'm going from the top of my mind. So I would say, you don't necessarily have to alert the FTB, but the next time you fill out a form, you'll add the DBA. But do look on the statement of information. And I just don't have it right in front of my eyes, but I think it says, is it operating under a DBA? And so that would be one that you would have to update. So that's the answer to the DBAs, what it is, why you would get it. And if you want to operate simply as a sole prop, then you don't even have to get a DBA. And a lot of people who are consultants, they will be working with clients personally. And so they have no issue getting a check written right to their name. And while I'm on that, put more questions in there, put more things we're going to talk about. I want to chat about sole props because this ties in well to it. It's like sole props got a bad rap, guys, and I want to talk about why that is and why a sole prop is a good consideration for many companies. Now, the main difference between a sole prop and an LLC is the LLC is a legal registered corporation, incorporated, and the sole prop is personal, right? It's not incorporated. And that is why it's called the default state, which really means if you did not register with the Secretary of State, by default, you're a sole prop. I get asked this all the time. What do I have to do to become a sole prop? The minute you're engaging in transactions, any business transactions, by default, you are a sole prop, okay? It just means you did not register with the Secretary of State. Now, this is a very fluid structure because you file a Schedule C when you have transactions to report for the year. And if you don't, you don't file a Schedule C. So you don't have to dissolve it, create it, none of that. You don't have to be paying, you're not subject to paying the $800 franchise tax fee, right? And so a lot of times what happens is people aren't even really fully experienced or explored their opportunity of their business, and they're already going through the expense of getting incorporated, the $800 franchise tax fee, the $25, cost for the statement of information, and then they're also subject to all these regulations that you have to do with separation of personal and business bank account, et cetera, when they're really kind of just starting out, just getting their toe in the water to see if it makes sense to even do a business, and suddenly they're in this full-on setup. It's kind of like I always like to explain, going and meeting somebody online and then marrying them. It's like you're jumping before you even have enough information about the situation. Now, people say, but what about the risk? And yes, and I always say this is the fine line. Risk is a personal thing. So hear what I'm saying, but understand to choose it. And I'm going to use this as an example. Say I did web design, or I did something along making some necklaces and selling them on Etsy, right? And so I'm going to save my personal assets. And unfortunately, the LLC is portrayed in social media, etc., as being like it's this Superman shield is going to protect you from everything. I've had people say, I need to have an LLC in case I get in a car accident. I'm like, huh? And I've had people say, my mother-in-law is so upset with me that I'm putting our children in harm's way by not having an LLC. Well, this is good marketing by companies like LegalZoom, who make money on people getting in LLCs, and the government makes money on people being in LLCs. So let's talk about this lawsuit type situation. If I was to say to you guys, you need a $2 million life insurance policy, some of you'd be like, no, I really don't. I don't need to pay for that. And I don't even have kids. Well, you might have kids. You might have a 2 million. You'd be like, no, you'd use discernment and you would push back against that. You'd go, no, that really doesn't make sense. But yet if I say, oh my God, you better be an LLC to protect your assets, you're signing up immediately, not even knowing what exactly you're protecting against. So let's walk through an LLC. So in this, if you have either a credit card, I didn't mean to say credit card, I meant to say any debt, like any bank loan, any borrowing of money, any debt outside of a credit card, because that's unsecured, you're going to have what's called a PG, or a personal guarantee. If you get rental space lease, you're going to sign a PG, personal guarantee. What that means is you are personally guaranteeing that debt if the company can't pay. So filing bankruptcy, you're still going to be responsible. The rent and any borrowing of money is the two biggest bills that a small business will experience. In other words, they can't rack up a huge vendor bill that's going to be, pennies on the dollar if you file bankruptcy, because they're not getting 30 days that much. So like I've gone through with my clients, doing turnaround, especially huge bankruptcies of, 20, $30 million company. They may have 500,000 in vendor bills unpaid, but small companies don't. So it really is about rent and lease. So we know a rent and a credit, right? So both of those will probably not go away. So the bankruptcy situation is not protecting you. Okay, so now I'm a web designer. I designed somebody's website and they hated it. So they call me up and they go, this is awful. And I go, well, I think it's the greatest. And I won't refund the money, which is, chances are, you harass me enough, I'm just going to say, take the money back and get on my face. So then the customer is going to have to dig in their pocket or go to small claims court, depending on the amount, and hire a lawyer, right? And because there's not a class action lawsuit against you who've done the web design, it just ain't going to happen. So they're going to have to go into their pockets, which is probably more than the web page, even web design even cost them, to hire a lawyer, to take you to court, which your court date's going to be somewhere down the road, to get a jury to say that web design is so bad that I am going to, take your house away, right? And so even if you're doing this, and you could say, well, they sued the company, not me, it's still your money. It's not like you're a big Coca-Cola employee and the company's paying, it's still your money, right? So when you look at the feasibility of you being sued for the web design and you look at the financial burden, being incorporated really didn't change it at all. And if you're concerned about it, it's better getting what is called E&O, that's elephant and orange. It's errors and emissions insurance. And in errors and emissions could be specialized and customized to a situation. And independent if you're incorporated or not, if you're really concerned about being sued, errors and emissions type insurance is the important thing. It's not like general liability where you slip and fall. I'm not saying that's not important depending on your situation, but this is insurances that can actually be customized to your circumstances. And so in that, many of these insurances cover the lawyer fees, the discovery fees, all of the fees that you'd be paying out your pocket, even if you're incorporated. So unfortunately, LLCs, although they have their purpose, they have been portrayed out there, and this is what you happen. You get a business idea, you file an LLC, you open a bank account, then you figure out what you're going to sell. And so many times I tell people when they're talking, people are calling me and they're asking what business structure they need to be before they figured out what in the world they're even selling. And I'm telling people, just go figure out what in the world you're selling, who will buy it, how much they will buy it for, and how many they'll buy. That is the big question here. Now, there are certain things that deem an LLC immediately. Maybe you're doing some, medical research, you're doing something that's an ingestible you have to worry about, you're doing something that could be harm in a class action suit. So I'm not saying it never should be an LLC all the time, but it's this always. I've seen people that are barely making any money and the $800 is killing them, and they're really not needing to be an LLC. So that is really the story on that. And back to Irwin, technically what it says on the statement of information is anytime any information changes, you need to update it. And so basically, I think you need to update it now. The thing I don't have in the front of my head, like I got almost the statement of information memorized, I think it does have a section on the DBA, and I can look at that as we're speaking. So in that, because you got a DBA and you did not have a DBA before, there will be a blank that says DBA that you would not have filled out. So therefore, that would have changed on the document. And if that changes on the document, then therefore you would need to do an update. So that's what I'm talking about. And I used to have a statement of information form just sitting here on my computer so I can see, does it ask DBA? But I have to believe it does. I never will answer something unless I can have a clear picture. And I have a lot of things memorized in my head, but sometimes not every single line of every single form. So that's hopefully that's making sense what I'm asking. So Sadie, I am totally lost in the chat. Tell me, is there anything I'm missing that we need to talk about?
Well, I'm looking at, do I need to update my SOI now, or do I wait until its due date? I don't know what an SOI is, Lori. I'm not
Well,
gonna lie.
you know what's so funny? That's the statement of information. So yeah, I caught that one. Yeah, you wouldn't have known, but that's the statement of information. So that's what I was talking about with the statement.
Okay, good, good. I was just like, I don't know if this is what she was talking about, but I'm gonna throw it. See, what is it? I'm not afraid to let people know I don't know everything.
Oh, and me too. I always say I never cornered the market on intelligence. That's like I said, I see the statement of information in my head. I just can't remember. I gotta believe it's got a spot for a DBA. So I think it probably, and by the way, to renew it, it's like $25 or something. You can do it online. So if you need any help on that, let me know. But I think you probably got that figured out because you were able to get through the DBA, which is really, really friggin' confusing. Anybody that is getting the DBA, by the way, if you're a sole prop, the first 3 pages are all about your information. When it says company name or individual name with the first question you see, that's referring to, like in Aaron's case, that his company is getting the DBA. So if you're a sole prop, you don't put the company name until I think it's like the 3rd page where it says, what fictitious business name do you want to use? So that's when you put that's when you finally do put the fictitious business name about 3 pages in. Don't put it in prior to that. You're either putting your corporation name, if you're getting it under your company name, or you're putting in your name. And then it's saying like, who is, who's going to own it, you versus the company, who's filling out this document, you, who is the person in charge of the company, you. So you're literally just putting your information in again and again and again. And it seems really redundant, but you see, I could have a LLC that is owning it. I could have me, the person in charge of the company, and I could have a secretary filling it out. So it could be 3 different people. It's just in the most cases, it's not. So that's why it actually makes sense. but it seems pretty confusing when you're doing it. Let's see, Rosalind, I just submitted paperwork to cancel my LLC and need to know if I can do the DBA that was under the LLC and now have the DBA as a sole prop. This is a friggin' awesome question. This is an awesome question. Okay.
You're excited, Lori.
I am, because this is one that people get really confused about on so many levels. So we're going with this on so many levels. I'm glad you asked that. Now, when, and I'm going to bring this all together because I'm going to say yes and no. Okay. So this is the important thing to understand. When you set up an LLC or a corporation, we're talking about an LLC in this case, you get an EIN. That EIN, and I'm going to expand upon this because a lot of people don't know EIN. So let me expand and do this as a great answering the question and a good education as well for other people. So EIN stands for Employer Identification Number. It is literally the numbering system that the IRS used. So just think IRS has a log system with numbers, that's the IRS, okay? So when you register your company with a state like California, you're going to get a corporate ID, and that's distributed by the state. In an LLC, it begins with 202, right? In California. Well, say I'm in Montana, say I'm in Florida, say I'm Washington, whatever, any state. They are going to have their own state numbering system, okay? Well, do you think the IRS is flexible and amends to the states? No, no. The states must amend to the IRS. So what happens is I want you to picture that you are creating an LLC and you're getting a state number, right? So here's the state number. Then you apply for an EIN, and here's the IRS. The IRS, say that fast 10 times, the IRS gives you an EIN and it slides over your corporate number. So you maintain that corporate ID number in the state, but you are now recognized as this EIN number, okay? So now whenever you use any documents, and the states also recognize the EIN number on seller's permit, this EIN number becomes the number associated, keyword associated, with this corporate ID. So now if you dissolve, which is the proper term, you dissolve the LLC, what happens? This falls away. That EIN was incorporated over the state corporate ID. It's now going to go away. You don't have to dissolve an EIN. The IRS just sees it, and I'll tell you how it sees it as not being used anymore. So if you here, now let's go back to your specific question. You had a corporation, you created a DBA, and you had the corporation owning that DBA under the EIN of the corporation. So when you dissolve the corporation, all of this goes away. It's like when somebody dies with a Social Security saying, hey, can I just use that number? You're not using it anymore. I think I'll get a few credit cards on it, right? We can't do that. That's called fraud, right? So your EIN is specific to that corporate ID. It cannot be used anymore. Now, say you're in a situation where I got the DBA, like your situation is exactly, I got a DBA, the corporation owned the DBA, I want the DBA, but I can't have it because the corporation owns it. Yes, you can. And I actually had to do this. So I had operated as a sole prop for very long under a name, then I incorporated, so I had to, and it can be either way, a sole prop or a company. You file with the LA County again, and you rescind is the legal term, but basically you are foregoing the DBA. In this case, the corporation is foregoing the DBA, right? So the DBA no longer is in existence, right? So now that the DBA is no longer in existence, then you are applying for that same name as a sole prop. So then you're bringing it under your name. The same would be true if I used a DBA as a sole prop. I then have to rescind it, or if it's expired, then it's expired, but I rescind it and then I apply again with the DBA as a corporation. Back in the days when I did it, it was not in online. It was not online, right? So I had to stand in line and get the rescind document at the county clerk's in Norwalk, I think it was. Then they made me go back and get in line again to do the next one on the corporation because I couldn't do two things in line because they are separate actions. So you would do one action and then you would do another. And keep in mind, these DBAs are good for 5 years and they don't let you know that you need to renew it. There's, sometimes you get information, sometimes you don't. So make sure you keep track tract of it so you know that it's up and you have to renew it, because otherwise there is always a chance that something, could happen, right? So there you go. That's the answer to that. And Erwin, I'm going to, if you can, Erwin, email me the actual your email address, so I have it. Email me, and Sadie has my email address in there. I'm going to be able to look up the official, statement of information and send it to you, and we can chat so I can make sure I know that the DBA is on there. I think it is, because if it's not, then you wouldn't have to update it. But I got to look at that again because I haven't in a while. It used to be that I looked at these forms all the time, right? But now that they're electronic and you just are filling in one thing at a time, you don't see them. So I have to always go through my old files because I kept the actual forms of everything. And then sometimes I go on the government website and I go back into the database and I pull the actual forms down so I can look at them again when I, have to remember something like that. So, Sadie, where
Yes.
am I don't know if
You
there's
are in
something
the
I didn't
Q&A
hit.
window. You are back in the Q&A
Oh, I
window.
am. I got it. Okay, here I am. Thank you, Sadie. Thank
No
you.
worries.
Okay, I obtained an EIN in my own name. Is that best that I change it to my new company's name when I file my DBA? So, Anne, I'm assuming you're a sole prop, right? Can I say that? Can you tell me? And when you say I obtained an EIN in my own name, I'm assuming you're a sole prop. While you're answering that, I'm going to tell you what this means about getting an EIN as well. Yep. Oh, perfect. Excellent question too, Anne, because this actually, you're building on things I wanted to chat about. So, we talked about that the corporate ID is then replaced by the EIN by the IRS, right? And that's the way it had been for some time. And then what happened, and I think it's been like a decade ago, I don't even remember. The IRS said, okay, for sole props, they technically always use their social security number, and they had for years, right? But I think it's right around the time identity theft happened, if I remember, the IRS started saying, you know what, if you're a sole prop and you don't want to use your social security number, you can get an EIN. Now, if you're a sole prop and you hired people, by the way, yes, sole props can hire people. I hear people say, well, sole props can't hire anybody. Oh, here's another little tidbit. The number's off a little bit because it's an old statistic, but about 80% of the companies in the United States is a sole prop. Yeah, 80%, guys. Like I said, sole props are made out to not be the thing to do anymore. And it happened, because I've been around a long time, right about when LegalZoom and all those companies started charging to have an LLC. That's when everybody said, oh, you must be incorporated. But before that, like in the country, mom and pops were always sole props. Okay, so anyway, so going back to this, so the IRS allowed people to have an EIN. Well, it follows the same thing. So now, instead of the corporate ID, I have my surname and my social security. I apply on the IRS site for an EIN. Smack, EIN goes after this. So once you get an EIN, you must use the EIN. That same with the corporate ID, that social security goes poof. So if you are filling your tax returns out and you fill out your social security when you already got an EIN, the IRS is like, where's the tax return? So you have to make sure you use it on everything, okay? So in that, if you have an EIN and I guess you are getting ready to file a DBA, right? It's going to ask you whether you have a social security or an EIN. Yes, use the EIN. So if I get it correctly, and it sounds like you did not, because you said when I file my DBA. So if you already have an EIN, you are a sole prop, put the EIN on the DBA, put the EIN on the seller's permit, put the EIN on every legal document you do. If you fill out a W-9 because somebody asked that, put the EIN on it. On your tax return, put the EIN on it. You get that trend, put the EIN on it. So absolutely do that way. So that's yeah, Anne's like, okay, I got it, Lori, EIN, I got it. So I want to go back and I want to say one thing about the EIN with dissolving the company. I said that the government has a way of knowing when you're not going to use the EIN anymore. So when you dissolve a company and you file the last tax returns, there is a little checkbox, and you click it and it says final return. And when you click the final return, that's an alert to the IRS not to expect any more returns. So you don't, if you will, dissolve an EIN, you just file a final return, which is a heads up to the IRS that there'll be no other tax returns coming. So that's the way that works. Okay. Did I miss anything, Sadie? If I can
No,
launch in another
no,
topic, but I
I,
can't
I
believe
was just
50
putting
people.
some
Oh,
links in
whoa,
there.
whoa, whoa, wait a minute. We got a Q&A. I can't believe 50 people are tuning in today,
Oh.
right before the holidays. I love you guys. I just love you. Okay, I have a client that wants to apply for an ITIN but doesn't have a tax return to file. They want to apply ITIN to file future tax returns. They want to start a small business. Can they still apply for without filing a tax return for the present? Yeah, there's no need to have to file a tax return because there are other reasons that people might want an ITIN, an ITIN number. There's other documents that might request it. So it's kind of like going back to the fact that I can get an EIN even if I'm not getting ready to file a tax return. So absolutely, they don't have to they don't have to have that being the only reason that they can file a tax return. That I believe in. Most of the times I see it, it's with a tax return. So this is one of those things that I'm, 96% sure. So please, the question's gone, so I don't have your name. Email me. I can do a double check on it because, like I said, I have a huge memory bank from all this stuff, and some of it I'm like, okay, I'm 100% sure, I'm 98% sure, and then, I'm pretty sure, and I always want to be able to research and look it up because I don't like to say anything that I'm not 100% sure. So I do believe, and I'm what's so funny, I always see a picture in my head because I have a photographic memory. So I'm literally on the IRS page on the ITIN number and trying to read the paragraph, just like I'm on the statement of information trying to read that one thing. And sometimes my photographic memory gets blurry in areas and I can't read the paragraphs verbatim. And so send me an email to reach out. But I think you're going to see when you go on the IRS's page, it will say why you would want to get one, which, I'm going to make a statement. The IRS pages are really interesting because they're easy for the novice to read. Like when you apply for an EIN, I just help somebody. I do a lot of times if you have to apply for the forms and you're really confused, what I do is I set up a one-on-one through the SBDC. I do it on Zoom and I just look at your computer and answer any questions. So I see these forms all the time. And when you apply for an EIN, it makes you understand what is a sole prop? Why would you need it? Do you need an EIN? And I know that one page for the IRS that talks about the ITIN is very similar. It asks a bunch of questions about that. And here, if I can find something really quick on that, and then it will say, well, when do you apply? Who can apply? All this. So that brings up another thing. Do go to right to the government webpage. I always say right to the horse's mouth. That's like my favorite thing to say on that, because you don't want to get this information off of anything else. So here, right before we leave, okay, to the person who just asked that question because your name's gone, but Sadie will know. I want you to look into the chat right now. Okay, there's a click for you. Okay, I think I pulled it up because I pulled it up really quickly. I think I got the right one. Do you need to file separately for the business part taxes, or if going through personal taxes, do you use the EIN and Schedule C part only? Awesome question. Berenice, can you tell me, not that it's going to matter, but so I know, are you a sole prop or an LLC? So here's the cool thing about this and something I want to talk about as well. So, and great question, another confusing thing. So one thing, a sole prop, excellent. So one thing I want to explain to you and to everybody on this, and this is the thing I get all the time. So I was a sole prop, but I wanted to start an LLC because I want those great tax write-offs. I'm like, there's no difference. Oh, no, no, there's a difference in the LLC. They have different tax. No, there's no difference. Yes, there is. I read it on the blog. I'm like, they use the same form. It's a Schedule C. They use the same form. And I like trying to drill it in people's head. There is no difference in taxation between a sole prop and LLC. It's only that you're filed with the Secretary of State. So it's a legal difference, but it's not a tax difference, okay? So what Bernice was talking about is the Schedule C. So we now know from what I just told you is the Schedule C gets filed with both a LLC as well as a sole prop. It gets inserted. Think about inserted in the 1040, but it is a separate document that's calculated. Think about like people relate to this. If you think maybe you own some rental property, you fill out a separate document and then that number gets placed in the 1040 personal. And that page, that form gets inserted in the document. So I always tell people, picture a big bowl on your kitchen table around tax time, right? And so if you get a W-2, that goes in the bowl. If you're filing joint, whoever your joint is, that goes in the bowl, their income. You got some rental product, that goes in the income. You got a business that filled out a Schedule C or 1120S and got a K1, that number, which is the net income, goes in the bowl as well. And that whole bowl represents all of your taxable income, right? That's your gross taxable income. So that's what it means in the pass through. Yes, you do have to file a Schedule C. That is the form that allows the calculation to say, this is how much the business brought in. This is how much that was spent in expenses. This is how much is left over, line 31 of the form. It's the net income. And this goes into the bowl as my gross income from any other income sources that I have. So you absolutely do have to do the Schedule C. By the way, I'm going to make this quick thing. It's kind of interesting. You know, you guys might have read that an LLC is a disregarded entity, right? You might have read that it's a disregarded entity. Can anybody in the chat, and I'll keep talking about this, do you know what disregarded entity is? Do you know why it's a disregarded entity? I ask people all the time, oh yeah, LLC is a disregarded entity. And I go, do you know what that means? They go, no. Okay, so here is clarification, and this is going to explain to you why both a sole prop and an LLC are taxed the same way, okay? So decades ago, I can't remember when, don't get me on the time, right? I love to tell this story, and I'm going to tell it in Lori's way of doing it, right? So businesses, mostly those investing in real estate, they didn't want the corporation with all the stock and everything because the IRS recognized only two things. You are a sole prop, which is a self-employed person. You're an unregistered partnership, self-employed persons. You are a corporation, and then you're either a S corp, a C corp, or a nonprofit. But basically, you're a self-employed person, or you're a corporation, which you are a stockholder, and then you're an employee of the corporation. That was since Christopher Columbus time. I'll tell you the Christopher Columbus story sometime. That's the way it was. So the real estate community who was investing in real estate, they didn't want to give out stock. They weren't trying to do that, but they wanted some of the asset protection, right? So they knock on the IRS's door and they say, hey, IRS, we really love that asset protection on the corporation. We want that. But you know, that stock distribution, those annual minutes, all those requirements of a separate tax return on that corporation, we don't want any of that. So we want this little cool hybrid company. Can you make one for us? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And remember, I told you the IRS isn't flexible. The IRS went, no. End of question. They go, you want that fancy little hybrid stuff? You go to the state. Now, this is where you have to understand the Constitution, because this is where we're a republic constitution, where the states, we're not really a democracy, we're really a republic constitution. The Constitution has separated the states. So the states have the ability to create legal structures for the corporations, right? So hence the LLC was born as a hybrid. That's why it's individual by state with different state rules. And so what happened is the state said, we're going to have a company that offers legal protection that is not required like the corporations to do the annual minutes and everything, right? So the IRS loves everything fitting in a funnel. So when it came to time to taxation, the IRS said, okay, fine. I am disregarding your LLC entity. In my eyes, you're a self-employed person if you're a single owner, and you are self-employed persons if you are a multi-member, following exactly like a sole prop and a partnership. That's why they are taxed the exact same way. Legally, they differ, but they're taxed the exact same way. Now, people say I'm a sole prop LLC. That's wrong, because you're one or the other, because you've got a legal status as an LLC that's different than a sole prop. So you have to be clear what you are. It's taxed as a sole prop. And that is the way that works. So one day I'll tell you about how the S corps came about, but that's the story of what a disregarded entity is. They're literally disregarding them. Okay. Oh, I got a question from Francisco. If I do any training workshops in Spanish or other languages. So here's the thing, Francisco. I tried to speak Spanish so many times. ¿Cómo está usted? is about all I got, right? I have tried and tried and tried. Now, there has been conversation with one of my colleagues of me doing a presentation. We've talked about it many times at the SBDC, and then her translating it into Spanish as well as the questions. And we just never have been able to get around to doing that with so much on our calendars, mostly myself. I keep saying it someday we'll do that. So if you've got any event coming on that you want me to speak at in English and have her transfer it Spanish, maybe we can get something on the books because I really do want to reach out to different people, especially, people that there, I know that there's a lot of people that can't, English isn't their first language, and I speak fast and it's a hard time understanding me. So I have been trying to do that, and I've given up on myself speaking Spanish, but I have had that conversation. So that's a shout out to that. Okay, Sadie, did I miss anything? Because too much is going on in the chat. It's flying all over the place. Tell me if I missed a question.
Well, I think we have a lot of people saying thank you. You gotta love a thank you. Things happening here. Lots of good info being given over here. I don't know, Lori. I'm looking at the time and it's 10:56.
I
Yeah.
was going to quit early because I'd have absolutely nothing to talk about. Yeah, absolutely nothing to
Well,
talk about.
here's me now, because I know this is, small biz LA talk, but I do work, for other people, not as awesome as you, Lori. But I don't know if you mind if I drop, because we're actually going to be doing a BOIR workshop
Yeah.
to actually do things. And then also for my Spanish speakers out there, I also help out the Spanish initiative because Lori is the best. But if you do feel comfortable reaching out to Spanish speakers, let me drop that link in you. Like I said, all our small business advisors at the SBDC are awesome. Lori, of course, is our favorite, but she's only one person. So please reach out to us because we want to help you. That's literally what we are here for. So as we say, Lori always, asks that I drop her email in the chat. So please email her. But for like Spanish, I'm like, hey, reach out to our little Spanish community over here. This is their Facebook page. You can see some of their info, lots of stuff in there. And then,
And they're great, Sadie. Thank you for bringing it up. It's actually Maria and Claudia that I've talked.
mm-hmm.
I've known Claudia for years. We have a really, really strong group that focuses on the Spanish community that are awesome. And they'll reach out to me with questions if they can't get answered. So by all means, tap into them. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Sadie, because they
No,
do.
totally. And like, and and I think you named it. Like, that's how we work. Like, we're not in like little silos. Like, we all help each other, help you folks, because like that's like we're our own little network, right? So everyone has their little area of specialization. But how you said, it's like Claudia will reach out to Lori because yes, we can't know everything. Even though we think we do, we cannot know everything.
No, it's so true, especially with, I have a hard time keeping up with all this legal and everything going on because it changes all the time. As an EA, I probably get maybe 8 emails from the IRS a day, believe it or not, with all these different changes. And so with the California law and the legalities of everything, it's so hard to even when you're in it. So with the 2 minutes left, I'm going to talk about my favorite thing, and this is how I'm going to end it. It's one of my favorite things that I've been talking about a lot. Owning your power. What do I mean? I always say take your power back. I say that all the time. It's time to take your power back. What do I mean by that? So I believe that the more we can be resilient and within ourselves and be able to create not only those things that we need to sustain ourselves, we got to buy a quart of milk, we got to pay for a roof over our head, we got to have a vehicle to drive, all those things to sustain ourselves. We also have to be able to find out what our desires and what our pleasures, what do we want to do? Somebody may want to take a trip to Europe, somebody might want to sit in the backyard and look at birds, okay? There's no right or wrong. It's whatever resonates with us, right? When we get really clear and we remove what we think we should be, need to be, what society believes we should be, what we bought into, and we really understand what it is that makes us feel alive, that makes us feel at peace, whatever word you want to put in there. I'm not trying to put words in. When we figure out what that is, then we can take all our energy and everything and engage in making that happen more than not. And that's what it's about. It's making it happen more than not. Where I see this with entrepreneurs is they have this desire. They say, I maybe want freedom. I want to experience this. I want to sell sell this. I want to do this. I want more time. I want that. They understand what they want, but they jump into a company not doing the numbers, not financially understanding how feasible it is, not knowing the gross profit margin. And day after day after day, I see them creating all around them a financial picture that is opposite of what they wanted. Suddenly, they don't have any time to spend with their kids. They're working all the time. They don't have enough profit margins to take that trip or do whatever they want. And they're not at peace. And now they're not owning their own power. So when I say own your own power, I'm saying go internally and figure out what it is that makes you feel alive, and then come up with a plan on how to experience that more. And then also understand that as much as I really love to dream and dream big, we still play a monopoly game on this 3D dimension we call Earth. And so we have to make sure our numbers line up. And so passion, dream big, put it out in the world, vision boards. I agree with all those words, but at the end of the day, there has to be a logical, feasible financial plan that is capable of covering the what we need to sustain our existence and what we desire. And that brings us full force to living the life we want to live and having our power. So power is about knowledge, it's about honesty, it's about reality, it's about taking all of that into account and figuring out what will work. And if we go towards a step and it's not getting us the results we want, we change our approach or change what we want. And we continue to work this formula where we know what we're trying to do, we take action towards it, we see if we're getting our results. If not, we change our approach. That is a formula for success that will never go wrong. I wish everybody happy, happy holidays and restful times doing whatever you are doing. And if you're at the family gathering and wish you were somebody else, make sure you give a little bit of time for you the rest of the day to do what you really want. I thank you for being here every week, time and time again. You're the joy of the week. And I hope I've touched you in many ways throughout the year, either with my knowledge or my personal strange beliefs on the world. Sadie, back to you.
I think I got a little something in my eye, Lori. I think it's just a little piece of lint, you know? All the warm fuzzies, right? And this is why we do these holiday shows, Lori. I told you, like we're our own little vibe here and we can have fun, but we do business. And like I think that's what I love about our community. We like you set a great tone where it's like, hey, this is what we got to do, but let's enjoy ourselves because there's too much other stuff going on. Let's not make it harder than it needs to be.
Absolutely. So with that, Sadie, you're going to stay around, make sure
Uh-huh.
everybody gets my information. If I wasn't fully able to answer a question or anything came up, please email me so I can do the research and get you an answer. And like, Sadie said, reach out to we got great advisors. Reach out to Sadie. We got wonderful people that talk about all the topics I don't, marketing and importing and you name it, as Sadie says at the beginning. So reach out to the SBDC. They really are a great resource. I'm going to go watch some birds and squirrels, and I will see everybody next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to Small Biz Talks with your host, Lori Williams. See you next week, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.